Godzilla and Kong are arguably one of the coolest duos out there, with both of them stopping global extinction twice already, first against the malicious Mechagodzilla, and then against the Scar King and Shimo in the newest film. However, with it being recently confirmed that the Monsterverse would continue in the form of a new season of Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, and other spin-offs, and hopefully a third Godzilla and Kong movie in the future, I thought that it would be a cool idea to cover a what-if which me and multitudes of people would like to see once again on the big screen. That being the return of arguably Godzilla's most dangerous foe yet, Destoroyah, who Heisei Godzilla faced off against in the climactic movie event in 1995. But what if Destoroyah existed in the Monsterverse and came to fruition after the Oxygen Destroyer was used in the oceanic battle between Godzilla and King Ghidorah? And after some time, the crustacean colony developed into the titanic scarlet demon that you see before you, complete with a micro-oxygen beam, energy absorption, division, regeneration, and DNA assimilation. Alongside Shimo and Mothra, would the heroic titans be able to defend the Earth, or would they fall to the perfect life form? In this video, we will analyze it through two lenses, a narrative one, which is more story and character oriented, and a versus battle one, which will depend on feats, scaling, statements, and the like. And I do wonder which one you will find more interesting, but to begin, we'll do an analysis of the Heisei era's power. Scaling the Heisei era is certainly interesting due to the statements that we get in the franchise alongside some guidebook info. I will be doing a super in-depth Heisei Godzilla video down the line after I get hella guidebooks translated, but for now, we will mostly use the main source material to analyze the Blood Red Devastator's power, speed, and durability. And to do this, we must first dive into the power of Godzilla, Super Mechagodzilla, and SpaceGodzilla. Within Godzillaverse Biollante, Godzilla faces off against the anti-Godzilla vehicle, the Super X2, which has a fire mirror made of synthetic diamonds meant to return Godzilla's atomic breath back at him by a factor of 10,000 times. This is pretty insane because Godzilla withstands this even prior to his nuclear buff that he gets in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which is implied to have given him a 200 times increase in guidebooks. It gets even crazier when you realize that there are guidebooks like the official Godzilla Compendium and the Return of Godzilla promotional book, among many more, that put pre-nuke amp Heisei Godzilla already above the power of Showa Godzilla, with Showa Godzilla scaling over 10 times above early King Ghidorah, who could absorb cosmic rays, lifelike planets with ease, threaten to destroy the Earth, and who could even absorb so much stellar energy that he made the sun dim with the help of a prism. I go more in depth with Showa era scaling in my Z Fighters vs. King Ghidorah video, but to quickly summarize, even average Showa era kaiju can life up the Earth and could even destroy it several times over, with there being confirmed multipliers in the series, such as King Caesar's reflection beam. So, if 1984 Godzilla scales from planetary to stellar levels of power, and can then withstand 10,000 times that level of energy, it's safe to say that he's easily as strong as a massive supernova cluster at this point. But for those that don't like that line of scaling so far and think it doesn't really seem possible due to most kaiju battles seemingly only destroying cities, I think you might be convinced with what the later Heisei era films provide. In Godzilla vs. Mothra, Big G withstands a meteor crashing right into him with no injuries whatsoever. And in the battle between him and Batra's larval form, they create a massive volcanic eruption between the Philippine and Eurasian plates. To further exemplify their great power, Batra and Mothra are both capable of destroying a gigantic asteroid that is stated as being able to destroy the Earth. Yet even as strong as they were, they had to tag team Godzilla. It's definitely up to interpretation if they mean life-wiping or straight-up planetary destruction with the asteroid collision, but it's more than likely that they mean planetary at this point, not only because of the multipliers, but because of the next contenders that Godzilla had to face, Mechagodzilla and the God of Destruction, SpaceGodzilla. Against Super Mechagodzilla, the fusion with Garuda, Godzilla was mostly outmatched to the point he needed an amp from Fire Rodan to defeat it, but he was able to withstand Mechagoji's energy blast spam numerous times, and his own energy being redirected back at him as well, likely even higher than 10,000 times, since Mechagodzilla's armor is supposed to be an improved version of the Super X2's Fire Mirror, as confirmed in the guidebooks. Alrighty, now let's get into the main course, SpaceGodzilla. This crystalline mofo is actually pretty helpful for scaling the Heisei era, not only power-wise, but also speed-wise. You see, it's stated in the movie that SpaceGodzilla came from a black hole and that it synthesized before being bathed in the energy of a supernova. Most people that downplay the Heisei era usually say it's a theory or a hyperbole and not really applicable, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Not only does the official Godzilla website confirm that SpaceGodzilla came from a black hole, but even the very early draft of the movie mentions the beast absorbing energy from a star. Koichi Kawakita, who worked in the Heisei movies, also confirmed in an interview that he designed the creature and that he came up with the origin to have it come from a black hole. This is further backed up by the official Godzilla 2014 video game Monster BIOS, stating that SpaceGodzilla did indeed absorb energy from a fixed star. The guidebooks, like the Godzilla vs. SpaceGodzilla picture book, confirm this as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are more statements out there that give this star-level meta further weight. If just one of SpaceGodzilla's cells can withstand the energy of a supernova, which can produce billions of times the brightness of our sun and can output as much, if not more, energy than our sun would during its lifetime, it's crazy to think about how strong he is as a complete, compact life form. SpaceGodzilla in the manga and the movie have not only been stated as being able to destroy planets, but he also showcases enough energy that supposedly lit up the universe, which according to calculations is at least solar system level. However, going by the multipliers, it's likely that they are well beyond this threshold of power. Big G did have a lot of difficulty taking down SpaceGodzilla, but with the help of Mothra, which is at least 3 times stronger than Mechagodzilla as confirmed in the Godzilla vs. G4 Super Weapon Manual, he was eventually able to overwhelm him, and even manages to make him blow up from how much energy he had. So it's clear that he was skilled from SpaceGodzilla and his amped fire state that he obtained from Rodan, even in base. Destoroyah's power is no joke because he was the final boss of the era, as he gave Burning Godzilla a tough fight. With Burning Godzilla already being even more powerful than anything seen beforehand, in effect, putting Destoroyah well above the power of SpaceGodzilla. In this scorching form, Godzilla has access to the Burning Heat Ray, and upon reaching Meltdown, he gains the Infinite Heat Ray, which you can certainly use to get higher metrics of power for these kaiju, depending on how literally you interpret its name. Destoroyah not only manages to withstand Burning Godzilla's attacks several times, but he even grows further in power as the skirmish escalated. These two titans went back and forth for the most part until Godzilla eventually overtakes him and forces him to retreat, at which point, the Super X3's weapons go to work and blast the creature's wings off, preventing him from escaping and causing him to explode shortly afterwards, just moments before his nemesis, Godzilla, went into a blaze of glory. Despite being defeated, Destoroyah gave a good first impression and has proven as being one of the strongest of Godzilla's ops, right up there in conversation with Kaiser Ghidorah from Godzilla Final Wars, and Void Ghidorah from the Godzilla Earth anime trilogy. At bare minimum, he should be large star to multi-solar system levels going off the SpaceGodzilla and Heisei Godzilla scaling, but he should be well above this going off of the Showa era scaling and the multipliers that we get in the guidebooks. So, to say that Destoroyah reaches galactic levels of power is not too far-fetched. Arguably even higher if you think he scales in any magnitude to the Infinite Heat Ray, if it's literally an infinite 3D attack, and possibly even above that if you think it literally increases in power infinitely each time it's fired. This is certainly a very wild highball, not gonna lie, but we have seen 4D statements in the Godzilla franchise before, such as when Zone Fighter fought a 4D kaiju called Ghidorah, who are pretty much complete fodder to even later era Showa monsters. So you can certainly argue for Universal plus Destoroyah, but I don't think the scaling is as concrete. However, it is worth mentioning that the Godzilla vs. Destoroyah theater program states that there was no guarantee that Destoroyah's evolution would stop at his perfect form, implying he could become even stronger, bigger, and more dangerous. Now at this point, you might believe that Godzilla and the others have no chance in hell against this behemoth, but there are 3 ways that we can scale Godzilla's power. First is off of canon feats and scaling, the second is through statements from the Monarch Legacy of Monsters show, and the third is through the DC Comics crossover. For starters, we have seen continental to multi-continental levels of power and range in the Monsterverse, such as pre-amped Kong being able to withstand an entire planet's worth of gravity upon entering the Hollow Earth portals, King Ghidorah being able to create thousands of storms and life wipe the Earth in as little as a few weeks, and Shimo being able to cause the last Ice Age. And with Evolved Godzilla having 20 times more energy capacity than before, and becoming at least 2 times stronger, you could argue that Godzilla and whoever scales to him could reach planetary levels. In which case, I think it's pretty clear that Destoroyah would demolish them with no difficulty, with his micro-oxygen overwhelming them and causing them to corrode. Not to mention that Destoroyah would be far more challenging than any other kaiju they faced previously. Power gap aside, Destoroyah can grapple in close quarters a lot more effectively than King Ghidorah, can fly, and pretty much has an extra limb to fight with, as he showcased with his tail, being able to drag and throw the massive Godzilla, who in an even weaker form was able to ragdoll Super Mechagodzilla, who weighs 150,000 tons. So it's fair to say that even if we weren't using scaling for Destoroyah and went purely off of physical stats, he would still be quite difficult to deal with in a close quarters battle, even against someone as massive as Shimo. Not to mention his variable slicer, his energy-based horn attack, would be very difficult to deal with. But now, what if we were using the Monarch statements? That's where it gets pretty interesting and actually makes the battle more competitive. In the series, it's stated that Hollow Earth portals have energy readings of 30 exahertz, which is typically the range of power that is given off by supermassive black holes, pulsars, and gamma-ray burst, with the largest ones having the power of over 9,000 supernovas. And no, this is not a Dragon Ball reference, they literally calculated it to be 9,000 supernovas. This is pretty insane because there are multitudes of Hollow Earth portals, and they are just one part of the whole that is the Hollow Earth, which is stated as having an energy level comparable to Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Kong, let alone the energy levels he obtained in his supercharged and evolved states. So if Kong, Shimo, and Mothra scale to him in any way, they theoretically have the latent power of thousands of supernovas in their very being. If so, it's actually possible that the Titan team would be able to damage and withstand blows from Destoroyah, but they would still face two huge problems: the micro-oxygen and the difference in speed. Even as a lowball, Destoroyah is at least several times faster than light due to him scaling to Showa-era characters who have reacted to, blocked, and outright dodged light-based attacks numerous times, and due to scaling from Godzilla and SpaceGodzilla who have FTL feats themselves. For instance, SpaceGodzilla was able to battle Mothra on his journey to the Earth in his flight crystalline form, which allowed the cosmic doppelganger to reach the Earth from a black hole, with the nearest black hole as a reference being about 1500 light years away. So even if it took SpaceGodzilla several days to reach our home, he'd still be massively faster than light. And you might think this only really applies to travel speed, but his crystals are much faster than that, and Godzilla has been able to react to them mid-combat. So if Destoroyah can't keep up with Godzilla, he should be that fast as well. And I know these speeds might seem really outlandish, but we did see SpaceGodzilla fight and fly at the same time. Even if we said that Monsterverse Godzilla's atomic breath was light speed, arguably even above that if you think that his evolved form also amplified his beam speed, Destoroyah should still be able to react to it and dodge accordingly, but I could see him get hit eventually if he's not careful. Generally, I think that if we are using the supernova meta for the legendary monsters and if they coordinate well, they could eventually overtake Destoroyah, but it's fair to say that they won't be able to hit him easily or walk away unscathed, especially if they are afflicted with the micro-oxygen. It also depends on if you think they'd be able to eradicate every bit of the colony before they collapse from exhaustion, or if Monarch becomes involved in some way and helps in cleaning up the mess. Within the DC comics, Godzilla would clap in base, let alone in his evolved form. If he can't keep up with a Superman who is stated by the writer as being as strong as the main Rebirth Superman, then he would blitz easily, even if we used a massively faster than light meta for Destoroyah. That's due to Superman being able to rival the Flash, who can travel back in time, and due to him scaling to Green Lanterns, who can traverse an infinite universe in mere hours, and are even able to cross infinite distances instantly. He's also so strong that the Justice League conceded that they could not damage him, to the point that they had to cheese him and trap him with nth metal chains at the bottom of the ocean. On another note, Kong was also capable of overwhelming several Green Lanterns. I know some people don't think that it's fair to say that these alternate versions are as strong as the main ones, but it's not unreasonable to say that they are at least relative or comparable to each other, since we have seen other heroes from alternate universes fighting each other. For instance, in Countdown Arena, when Monarch made a bunch of alternate heroes fight each other to gain a place in his army, and when Silver Age Superman fought Golden Age Superman, who has also fought Post-Crisis Superman. Another example, New 52 Hal Jordan has also faced off against Parallax Hal Jordan, with them being roughly equal in their encounter. Either way, with this in mind, it's fair to say that Shimo, Mothra, or Kong, going off of this DC scaling, would also clap up Destoroyah. Even if we use the 4D plus scaling for Destoroyah, these DC characters are well beyond that threshold of power. So if the Titans scale to some of them, then they would also be buffed in effect. So yeah, not much of a happy ending there unless we use the highest possible metas for the Monsterverse Godzilla side. But generally, I think that it could be competitive to an extent, going off the statements from the Monarch show. But now, let's analyze this through a narrative side of things. How could the story be written out in a simple way? Who would the story ordain to win or lose? As we have seen with the Titans multiple times, especially Godzilla, they are able to sense when there is impending danger coming. The battle with the Scar King and Shimo was certainly somewhat challenging, most particularly against Shimo, but due to her breaking out of the Red Ape's control, she doesn't have Big G worried anymore. But the main reason he even went through the process of supercharging and evolving further after decimating Tiamat was not for the events in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. It was for this, Destoroyah. I think that the Red Demon would be such a huge threat that it would require more than just Godzilla and Kong to defeat it. Mothra would likely play support, spamming Silk and overlooking the battle from atop, while Shimo would work in tandem with Godzilla and Kong, freezing and staggering Destoroyah long enough for the others to land hits on him. Maybe Monarch gets involved at some point with some high-grade weaponry, or manages to come up with some counter to slow down Destoroyah and give the Titans an opening. I'd also expect at least one of the main Titans to die, likely Godzilla to give him a proper send-off if Legendary does plan on it being the conclusion to the franchise. Maybe Mothra sacrifices herself again, or she empowers Godzilla to the point he reaches an evolved thermonuclear state, which would be pretty damn awesome to say the least. Kong would be able to do some work with his axe and gauntlet, but for him to really compete with Destoroyah, I think it'd be fair to give him an amp in the form of an energy source or a lightning storm, like in the Showa era. It's also very possible that along the way, Destoroyah showcases its DNA assimilation capabilities and evolves as the film goes on, becoming even stronger and more dangerous as well. Regardless, I think that in the end, the heroic Titans would save the Earth once more, but the battle would be more intense than anything they had ever seen before, and there would be many casualties for both Titan and humankind. But yeah, there you go, that's how I think the battle would go down depending on the scenario. Do you think Destoroyah would be able to beat Godzilla and Kong to the point the other Titans have to get involved? Or do you think that the duo could take care of him on their own? Please let me know. I'd also urge you guys to check out Narek's page in the description below, as they are the amazing artists behind the thumbnail. And be sure to also check out the other artists who made the amazing art you saw in this video. Thanks again, and peace out.